All right, Matt, I appreciate you coming on the podcast today. It's great to finally meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you as well, Matthew. Excited to chat today.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, so first things first, would love for you to just briefly tell me about your journey. How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so today I work for a company called HatchWork. So we're a nearshore software development provider. So think of you need to build some kind of custom solution. It's very expensive, and our solution kind of takes advantage of all the great talent in Latin America, and we could actually build it for you from beginning to end, but same time zone, more cost effective, just really great kind of solution there. But yeah, for me, my journey's been interesting. So I cover VP of marketing and strategy right now. I started, back in the day and kind of project management, then got into marketing analytics. So that was a fun kind of journey there as my first kind of go into marketing. And I was basically working with like these super smart, like PhD data scientists, and they could do this awesome stuff, but they couldn't tell a story with the data. So I was kind of tasked with that, and that's where I kind of got interested on the data and analytics side of things as well. And then I moved into more traditional kind of product marketing. So I had my go at product marketing, which can be kind of an ambiguous thing for some. And then I got into more traditional like product development, product management, and then started doing that at Hatchworks. And then I kind of wove through Hatchworks filling gaps we had in the organization. Like we didn't have a client, what most would call a client success. We called it client engagement team. So I helped kind of get that off the ground. And then we had a gap in terms of strategy. So I took over strategy. And then we had a gap in terms of like marketing. We used to outsource all of it. So I took that over. So it's kind of been a journey of filling gaps through the organization. So I joined it when it was relatively new, but that's kind of the quick and dirty version of how I got to where I am today.
Cool, cool, love it. And in terms of your current role at HatchWorks, VP marketing strategy, what kind of things are you responsible for? What are you looking after?
Yeah, all the things. So we got a very small team. We're myself, we have a marketing manager, marketing designer, and marketing coordinator, and we leverage some outside consultants here and there for different things.
Mhm.
But everything from think strategy to positioning to messaging, and then how you develop content around that. And I think that's like an important piece. And we struggle with it at times, but foundationally having your positioning and strategy defined is so important. And I feel like so many marketers overlook this piece.
Yeah.
And marketing isn't always responsible for that, but it's one of the most important things that they need to be successful. But so all of that really, and then all of the content creation, whether it be through blogs, podcasts, different reports, things like that, all of social, throw in PR, it's all the things which can be tough. So that's the areas like where do you focus your time and your team's efforts?
Yeah,
That's another fun aspect of it.
totally. Yeah, I feel like as marketers, sometimes we'll sprint to the tactics and just start doing things, maybe the things we read on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
but we don't have that strategy, shored up yet, or that messaging shored up. So all that stuff just ends up falling flat. So totally
Yeah.
feel you on that one. Cool. So yeah, just kind of backtracking on your career, you started in project management. I know you kind of touched around how you moved into marketing, but what skills as a project manager have you brought into the marketing world?
Yeah, and it's funny. I kind of fell into project management because this was like early days of Facebook. I had just graduated college, and a friend said I have a need for an intern, and I was like, I need a job. So it was a paid internship out of school, and that's how it kind of started. And it was in the telecom arena. But I think from a project management standpoint, it's all about how are you managing to execution and managing working with different stakeholders and parties that don't report to you. So you learn a lot there. But then I went back to school and got an MBA, which we could debate how valuable those actually are. I think the value came in the connections I made, and I was wanting to kind of do something different. And it was a connection I had made through the school that worked at a different area of AT&T. I was at AT&T at the time. So this was an introduction into Cricket, which is like one of their prepaid brands. And that's how I got into marketing analytics. So, it's just a lot of, especially for young people, it's like the value of the connections is critical. And it's a lot of times overlooked where
Yep.
people think it's just pure like, oh, I just got to know how to do the things and that's it. No, but the connections are really important if you want to kind of get to where you're going.
Yeah, so touching on those companies you worked for, AT&T, Cricket, larger telecom companies, and then you moved to HatchWorks, obviously much smaller company. What made you decide to go to a smaller company? And then, what have you learned that maybe you wouldn't have learned at those bigger telecom companies?
Yeah, and I think there's importance in having both experiences. And AT&T is huge. Like it's enormous. Like forget how many people they have, but it's just like an entire state inside itself. But I was, you know, partly kind of getting burnt out on just being feeling like you're kind of a cog in the wheel. And they were also looking to move people to Dallas or California, El Segundo, where more of the strategic areas were. So that kind of weighed into it. And it was actually the leader of our product organization, Brandon Powell. He went off and started HatchWork. So I had worked with him prior, and I had just talked to him. I was looking to do something different, and kind of was just getting his take and seeing where good opportunities would be to investigate with other companies. And then he had an opportunity come up, and so I went and joined him at HatchWorks. And I kind of had this decision point. I had a couple options at play, with some more established companies. This was definitely riskier. I was like, I think the ninth person that joined. So there could be, upside, or it could, crash and burn in 6 months and I'd be out of a job. But I just felt like it was worth the risk. And for me, I was following the leader. So I believed in the leader. So that's what I was kind of betting on. And it's panned out so far. So it's been allowed me to accelerate my journey and growth. Like if I was still at AT&T, there's no way I think, I would have been able to accelerate this quickly. So I think that's another benefit of kind of going small.
Yeah, and with that being said, you've done a number of different positions, even when you're at the bigger companies, but even now, hasn't been a linear path per se, although always seemed to be up and to the right, which is good. But what has made you want to just kind of fill gaps as opposed to saying like, okay, no, I'm a product marketer and I'm gonna either switch companies and go into another product marketing role or keep doubling down on this career path?
Yeah, I think it's been partly out of necessity, just gaps in the company. So that's been part of it. And I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but I tend to sometimes get bored when I get used to doing something. So I enjoy like getting into something new and learning. So that's, I think, just an angle that's driven me to explore. But the different areas I've been in, from more like, marketing to product to analytics to product marketing to client success to like operations, it's kind of filled out the map for me on how all the things work together. Like I
Right.
feel, like when I used to be just on the product side, you don't have as good of an understanding on the marketing side, but marketing's critical to bring a product to market, like the
Yeah.
go to market aspect of it. And it just kind of helps fill in context. So that's been one of the most valuable things, but really it's kind of just been out of need and necessity. Plus, I just enjoy kind of digging into something new.
And yeah, a lot of different positions, but you seem to always keep elevating your role over the last however many years. Broadly speaking, what are some of the top skills or strategy that you have found help you climb the ladder?
Yeah, I think it's being able to identify gaps and jump in to help out even before, whether there's a defined position or a defined need, or, an opening. Put yourself out there in advance. I think that's a way to just elevate yourself in an organization, whether it's small or large. So you're kind of showing intent, because people don't know what you want to do, what your growth plan is in your head, unless you actually talk about it with somebody. So I think that's a big piece, being intentional about what you want to do, but then just looking for areas you can help out, even if it's not, your direct responsibility or task, or just find gaps in the organization is a great way to kind of grow. And I think like I go back to the CEO at the time, I think Randall Stevenson's at AT&T. They do these like town halls where they'll travel around and talk to all the people and stuff. But one thing that he mentioned is in his career, like he kept getting these like shit jobs, and shit meaning that they were like very hard, like they were a complete mess. And he just kept getting handed these things. And he was, at one point, he was talking to his boss, like, why do you keep putting me on these things? And it was because he was able to go in and fix the issue. And that's a true skill. And that's kind of how he elevated throughout. So it kind of flip the mentality of that being a negative thing to a positive thing in terms of how folks viewed him in the organization, that he could go in and make something better.
Cool. Love that. It's a great story and a great lesson, I think. Yeah, so generally you stayed with the same companies for extended period of time. So there's some people who in 8 years, they'll be with 7 different companies, which nothing wrong with that. You seem to be more on the opposite side. Is this intentional? Are you just really good at picking companies, or where has this come from?
Yeah, I don't know. I think with the AT&T side of it, as part of me thought I would just keep growing up through that organization. So I stuck with it maybe longer than I should have, but I learned a lot. And I think when you're in a big company too, like I moved through different organizations, like even though Cricket was AT&T, it felt like a completely different company, right?
Yeah.
So there's that angle of it. With Hatchworks, it really has just been a lot of fun growing the company and being on this path. Like we were kind of startup mode to now we're in more of scale up mode. So I'm still learning a ton and I still really enjoy it.
Yeah, you've been a marketing VP for a little over a year now. I know you've been in marketing before and had your hands in it for a while, but generally speaking, are there mistakes you made in the beginning of your tenure that maybe you try and avoid today?
Yeah, there's probably too many to list, but I think one thing I'd say that worked really well for us is if you have gaps in your knowledge, either for yourself or within your team, finding experts that can kind of teach you how to fish has been really successful for us. Like SEO was not a super strong point on our team. So we brought in an expert and he taught us SEO, how to do it, all the things we needed. And then we were able to go on and we now have that skill. So I think that's an important lesson I've kind of learned. The other thing is the importance of your positioning in the market. You know, people kind of make marketing seem like you just have to do these things and marketing will work. But at the base level, you have to have a product and solution people want to buy that's well positioned in the market, or it doesn't matter how much marketing you do, investment, whatever the tactics are, it's just not going to work. So that's critical. And then the importance of messaging, I think, is the other one. I think at times we jump to just, creating content, updating the website, all of that without having a foundational messaging document. So that's helped
Yep.
us and just keeping things consistent. I know like April Dunfort's a big proponent of this in terms of positioning, like she's the positioning guru, but she also talks about the importance of having a solid messaging document that everybody in the organization can reference to. So stuff doesn't, I think she calls it messaging drift, where things just kind of start to change over time and you don't realize where you are. The other thing I'd say too is just for us, we have our marketing managers is in Montana, our marketing designers in Guatemala, our marketing coordinator is in Colombia. Like looking outside, whether it's your immediate area or even the US, has been like a big unlock for us in terms of finding talent.
In terms of the messaging and positioning, was that you guys just talking to a lot of customers and shoring that up, or how generally was that created, or did it take a long period of time to create?
Yeah, so definitely talking to customers is a big piece of that. I think the thing we've struggled with is, and we're going through this now, which is kind of interesting, is nearshore has worked for us. Like it's grown our business like crazy, especially since, post COVID, where being physically in the office is not important, but being aligned by time zone is. Like that's worked for us. That's been our growth engine. But at times, I think strategically, we're like, oh, but we want to be this XYZ digital transformation company that does AI and all that stuff. And we do
Yeah.
that, but like the core thing that differentiates us or is where customers find value is in nearshore. So right now we're fine tuning our positioning to really lean into that and own that category to where, we're in the nearshore software development category. How can we own that to where you think of nearshore, you think of HatchWorks? So we're starting to become a lot more intentional in owning that category. And it just makes the marketing so much easier because now we have clear direction on the space we want to own, where we want to play. And then it's easier to figure out, okay, well, what makes you different in that space? And then how are you going to win in that category?
Love that. Thanks. Coming up on the second last one here, internal reporting. What are some of your strategies for internal reporting? What have you seen work really well?
Yeah. So the biggest thing for us has been less on like a tool or something like that, but more in terms of how we think about what are the key measures we need to be tracking and the difference between a lagging metric and a lead measure. Because in the past, we, would focus on way too many things. And a lot of times they were lagging metrics that by the time you got the metric, you couldn't influence it. So the way we're kind of looking at it, we have three main things we look at. So revenue, gross margin, and retention. Those are our three kind of core lagging metrics we look at. And then we say, okay, well, what are the leading metrics that drive those lagging metrics? So you can look at revenue, you can kind of work up backwards from there all the way to like the meetings and how you're getting those meetings. And then that's what you're tracking to drive revenue versus solely looking at revenue. So that's been the biggest unlock for us. So we go through this on a quarterly basis where we look at how we're tracking, what are the lead measures, how are those doing? And that's been the, really the thing that's driven a lot of our growth is being focused on three things and what is driving those three things. And then, we use tools like HubSpot and things like that where we have some of the reporting embedded in there.
Yep.
But less about the tool and more about what you're tracking, I think is the key thing.
And are you taking those things and shouting them out to the broader company, on a monthly basis, or what kind of happens on that front?
Yeah. So we have something called a Hatch Huddle, which is like a monthly all hands for the whole company. And we go through those metrics. I think it's one thing with HatchWorks, we're super transparent. Like we get into the financials, the data.
Nice.
So every month, everybody in the company knows where we stand related to these metrics that we're tracking towards. And we also talk about like how folks can influence those, because a lot of times people think, well, I can't impact revenue or whatnot. But you break it down to what are the activities that drive that. And, if our team members are performing on the account, our clients are happy, they're going to want to extend the engagement, grow the engagement, and that directly impacts revenue. Or they may want to, use this for other initiatives within the organization. So yeah, we talk about it a lot.
Cool. Well, last question, I ask this one to everyone. What advice would you give to less senior marketers who are looking to be in a role like yours one day?
Yeah. So I think going back to the strategy side, figure out and understand strategy. And that word is used way too often, SEO strategy, marketing strategy, paid ad strategy. What I'm talking about is like the big S strategy. And like the couple of books I would reference to learn this is Playing to Win's a really good foundational one. Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. April Dunford, obviously awesome on the positioning side. That's the core strategy. And if you can understand that, it allows you to have different conversations within the organization versus it just being like marketing fluff type stuff. Like you can connect and talk with others in the organization intelligently once you start to understand strategy. And it's all about where do we play? So what's the playing field or the category we play in? How are we going to win on that category? So what makes us different? Who are we going after? You talk about target, ICP, all that kind of stuff. And then what capabilities do we need to execute on that is the other piece. And that's where a lot of people fall down, is on the execution side of strategy. So what do we need to do? Like for us, nearshore was important. So we focused on, we got in a head of talent and culture that's just completely changed how we recruit across the Americas. We've intentionally built out offices in Costa Rica and Colombia, invested in country managers, engineering managers that are local in Latin America. So we've been intentional about investing in things to back up that strategy. So it doesn't feel like marketing, but it's one of the most important, I think, missed things that marketers sometimes don't understand, especially when they're, newer in their career.
Cool. I love that. I think that's an awesome answer. Well, Matt, it's been awesome having you on the podcast. A lot of great insights. I appreciate you taking the time.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks.